Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Nectar, Sex, and Soul. I'm your host, Soraya Leonora, and I'm a holistic sex and relationship coach. This is a chance for us to get intimate, to reach far into the mystical, magical, erotic, tender, inspiring, vital, primordial depths of what it is to be human, what it is to express and inhabit these amazing bodies fully, and what it is to make love to the divine in everything we do. We'll be penetrating deeply into the nectar of what it is to be alive and turned on by life, how to transmute pain and hardship into pleasure and medicine, how to embody the union of polarities, including sex and spirit, and how to love every piece of ourselves wholeheartedly. This is a space where we don't just talk about the act of sex, but rather how sexual energy permeates every area of our lives as the seed of creation and the source from which we all came. Exploring sexuality in this way not only takes our sex lives to the next level, but is a catalyst for a life that turns us on in each and every moment, not just in the bedroom. Within you stirs a sexual vitality that is capable of so much more than you could possibly imagine. This is what we explore on Nectar, Sex, and Soul. Thanks for coming to play. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to Nectar, Sex, and Soul. I hope you're all having a beautiful day. I have a really interesting topic today that I want to explore with all of you that is going to go a lot deeper than what you might expect with this question. So we're going to be looking at what defines a successful relationship. And I have a little story around why I started looking into this particular question so much recently. But I first want to start off by saying that a lot of people come to me and they talk about their failed marriage or their failed relationship. And I think this is a really interesting perspective. And I'm really curious if we can really call any relationship a failure. There can be pieces of the relationship that we failed at, right? Maybe we failed to tell the truth or to communicate effectively or to share of ourselves vulnerably enough to cultivate any sort of depth. There can be all kinds of things we feel like we failed at in the relationship. But did the relationship fail itself? And I would say that as long as you learned and grew from the relationship, that it was not a failure. So I see a lot of people in our culture really hold longevity and permanence as the marker for success in relationship, even if it wasn't a happy, fulfilling relationship. We can kind of become these martyrs for our marriages and to live a life that feels empty or meaningless or dishonest because we made a commitment and we hold that above all else. And on the flip side, other people throw things away when they get hard or plateau. They don't honor the commitment of showing up to do their best. They don't lean into that challenge. They just throw it away and look for someone new. And when we don't resolve a conflict within ourselves, a challenge, a piece of our karma that is ours to work through in one relationship, it will show up in another relationship wearing a different costume. And that doesn't mean that we have to stay in the relationship that we're in to work through that. It could be that there's just a huge incompatibility or that it's toxic and unhealthy, or maybe there's damage that feels irreversible. There's too much resentment, there's too much distrust, whatever it is. Sometimes we do need to move on and work through it with a different person, have a fresh slate. But let's say we have something like we struggle to communicate in relationship, or we struggle to ask for what we want, or we go into people pleasing. These kinds of dynamics are just going to transfer over to another relationship if we don't resolve them in this relationship. So that's important to be aware of. So we have some people that stay in their relationship regardless of the fact that they're unhappy. And then we have other people who get out of the relationship as soon as it gets hard. And honestly, some people kind of check out of the relationship emotionally, but they stay in the institution of their commitment. They stay married because that's what they committed to, but they're not even actually showing up to honor that commitment, to bring their best forth. They're just staying in the actual container of it, but not bringing their best forth, not living up to what that commitment actually meant. What were the vows that they made? Are they just checking the box and doing the thing they think they're supposed to by saying, well, I'm staying married, this is what makes for a successful relationship? Or are they doing the work to show up to meet the challenges of the relationship honestly? There's a huge difference here. So a couple of reasons that I'm getting into this topic today. And one of them, I'll start with a little story. So a man reached out to me a couple times on social media, speaking to some things in relation to my content. And then he said, "Hi, I'm curious, are you in a successful union with another?" And I thought that was a really interesting question to ask. And I didn't know if he was asking it because it pertains to my work or if it was kind of a roundabout way of asking me if I was single. And so I asked him, I'm curious why you emphasize successful. And he said, I consider a successful union between two individuals as a functional relationship in the world with a shared sense of purpose, compatibility, and readiness. Some would not be in the stage of a successful union, more in the stage of exploring and discovering who they are in the world and not ready for deeper union with another. So I thought that was a really interesting breakdown. And I shared with him that from my perspective, relationships are these living, breathing, evolving, dynamic entities. They are ever-changing, ebbing and flowing, and they are not static. And each point of the relationship will bring its own challenges. We often see success as a point in time. We see it as this pinnacle moment that we are working towards, and that once we achieve that, we will be in this place of success. But the thing about success is that once we achieve that level of success that we were desiring, once we achieve some desire, we want to go deeper. We want to take it to the next level. So our definition of success is often going to be evolving. Maybe what felt successful to you when you were 16 is going to feel very different to you than what feels successful to you in your 30s in relationship, right? So we always want to be peeling back the layers and going deeper. And I found successful to just be a very interesting term in relation to union. So I explained this to him. He responded with a heart, and then he proceeded to unfollow me. So just side tangent, I made a post recently about how annoying it is to be approached with the line, "Are you single?" And I did think it was kind of funny that he worded it differently, but it was very obvious that he was only curious if there was a space to enter in a potential romantic or sexual dynamic with me. And it even made me reflect on, I wonder if his breakdown of what successful union is versus in a stage of exploring and discovering who they are in the world and not ready for a deeper union with another, if that was a curiosity of like, oh, is there a place that I can get in if it's not considered a successful union? Perhaps I'm wrong in his intentions, but if you read my recent post, I was discussing how it's a very annoying thing to be approached in that way, especially when it's obvious that there is a clear intention of what somebody wants from you without the desire to get to know you in any other capacity. It's an interesting thing, right? Because of course you can have a romantic or sexual interest in somebody, and that's totally okay. And there's no shame in admitting that or acting on it or anything. But when you make it really clear, I was only here for this, and I have no interest in engaging you or your work that I was pretending to be fond of outside of that possibility, to me, it says a lot about a person. It has this like, what can I get from you energy? So I can say for sure that if I were to ever not be in a relationship as I am now, which I guess I didn't speak to what my answer was around, yes, I am in what I do consider to be a successful sacred union, although successful is not maybe the term I would have initially used to describe the health of a relationship. But let's say I were to become single again, that guy is definitely not the one who's going to have a chance or who I'm going to follow up with in the interest of that kind of connection. So just a side tangent there, okay? I'll probably do a whole episode on this at some point because there were still some men that were confused about my post and don't understand why you can't just cold call some woman in her DMs and expect it to go well. It doesn't make women feel like there's any authenticity to it. It seems like you're just kind of scrolling and dropping in the DMs of whoever interests you. It doesn't feel like there's a genuine interest in who we are when we're approached in that way. And I'll probably do an episode on it at some point because I think there's still a lot of confusion around why. So that was just a side tangent, but I doubt he's listening to this. But if he is, thank you for the inspiration for the topic. And it's something that really got me reflecting on what do people consider successful? How can we determine whether or not a relationship is successful? And I don't love the word successful here, like I said. So maybe I would look at it more as fulfilling. Is it a fulfilling relationship? Is it a relationship that feels in alignment? Is it a healthy sacred union? Right? So there's different ways that I would look at this. But we can use the word successful because I think a lot of people do like to think in those terms. And especially men. Men can be very goal-oriented, and I think success is a goal-oriented word in a lot of ways. So one of the things that I'll say is that some of my most terrible relationships taught me the most about who I am, about what I want and what I don't want in relationship, about self-worth, self-love, boundaries. There's so many things I learned from very tumultuous, dramatic, toxic relationships. And that doesn't mean that we should stay in them. So learning and growing from a relationship is not the only marker of success and if we should stay in it. But my point in speaking to that is that we can alchemize any relationship into a successful experience of growth and evolution if we choose to harvest the medicine and gifts from it. And sometimes we need to walk away and then harvest the gifts and medicine. One of the questions that I really like to ask is, am I learning and growing in this relationship? But deeper than that, do I like who we've each become through this relationship? That's a really big question. Because if you feel like you're losing yourself, or if you see your partner losing themselves, if you don't actually like who you've become, if this is just bringing out sides in you that are kind of taking over your life. So of course, relationship is going to drudge up the shadows and the icky parts of us that are hard to look at. And that's normal. And part of that is to learn to love those parts of ourselves within the relationship. But overall, do you like who you're becoming in this relationship? Are you learning to love yourself more deeply? Do you like the direction your life is taking? And do you feel more enriched and enlivened by this relationship? Or do you feel more drained and distracted? That's another really good barometer to look at. There's always going to be a blend of all of it, right? Sometimes processing and arguments can be draining. Sometimes we can get distracted by being in love or by having to navigate the tough stuff. It can feel like it pulls us away from other areas of our life. That's bound to happen to some extent, but in the bigger picture, which side are you veering to more? Do you find that you're feeling enriched and enlivened, or do you feel like you're being pulled down, drained, and distracted in some way? So these are just some questions to ponder where you can really evaluate the health, the happiness, the success of your relationship. Another one I really like to look at is, do we harmonize well, or is compromise more prevalent? So we learn a lot in relationship. That relationship is all about compromise. I hear people say that all the time, and I do not agree with it. I don't. When you hear that someone's immune system is compromised, what comes up for you? Are you like, oh, sweet, that's awesome, good job? No, you're like, man, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. There's like a heaviness around it, right? It's not something that we're happy about. Compromising is a situation where either neither person gets what they want or one person gets what they want at the expense of the other. Harmonizing is where we each work to meet each other. So let's say two people are singing and one person is singing up here and one person is singing down here. And maybe both people have to stretch their voice a little bit. One person has to come a little bit lower. One person has to come a bit higher to reach that sweet spot of harmony. But neither person is straining their voice or bending over backwards or hurting themselves or abandoning themselves to reach that harmony point. Sometimes short-term compromise can be necessary for a bigger picture vision. So sometimes we have to make sacrifices in the name of something larger that we're cultivating. But is that sacrifice coming at the expense of our well-being? Is it something that is going to take a massive toll on us? Or is it maybe just something that's uncomfortable that we just have to push through and there's a big growth edge there, but it's not harming us to work with it, right? So sometimes we have to do that. But it's a very nuanced area. It's a slippery slope. We have to be really careful about it because if we stay in that place of compromise too long, if suddenly it's not a short-term sacrifice for a bigger purpose, then that's where resentment starts to come in. So resentment happens when we've compromised ourselves, and then that resentment gets projected onto the other person or the situation when really we're resenting ourselves because we compromised. And we compromised in a way that wasn't in alignment for us. So that's another really important thing to look at is, does this relationship align with my mission, my purpose, my values, right? That's a really important one. Is this taking me off track? Are there areas where we are just really oil and water that are big foundational components to having a harmonious relationship? Are there these big sticking points that we just keep reaching a point where one or both of us has to compromise and we just can't seem to work through it in a way that feels good? And looking at all these different layers of compatibility, because a lot of times people skip over areas of compatibility because we're just high on brain drugs, right? We're high on love. There's all kinds of things happening in our body, our hormones, that make us skip over some really important things sometimes. Love is not enough to make a relationship solid and sustainable and fulfilling. It can be in the short term, but if there is a compromise around values or an incompatibility sexually, emotionally, communication-wise, in your lifestyle, in your desires, domestically, that's a big one too. Some people don't live well together, and sometimes I think what makes a relationship more sustainable is to not live together. And a lot of people have a stigma around that. They think that, if we started living together and it didn't work out and we move out from each other, it means something is wrong with our relationship. It means we're doomed to fail. And there's a resistance to not living together. It's seen as like the thing you're supposed to do. If you're on the relationship escalator, you're supposed to move in together. For some people, that works really well. And some people I do think are better off not living together, and they can still have a really healthy relationship, and their relationship can be even healthier if they don't live together. So in my own relationship, we've had periods where we've lived together, and we've had periods where we took space and lived apart for a year or traveled separately. And that was really healthy for us. And we came back together stronger after that. And ultimately, we decided we do want to live together. And there are challenges we have to work through domestically. How each person likes to keep the house. How do you split up chores? Like, what kind of home do you want to live in? These are questions that we have to ask and try to get on the same page about. And oftentimes, what two people are creating, it's going to be its own entity. So it's not going to be how you would live if you were by yourself or how they would live if they were by themselves, but it's going to be something you co-create together that's going to look different than what either of you would do on your own. But does that co-creation feel harmonious? Can you reach a point of agreement there where it feels good for both of you? I've definitely seen situations where I've had friends who we love each other so much and we just don't live well together, and we do a lot better not living together. And I've had roommates where we live really well together, but we don't have like that great of a friendship. Like, we're probably not going to hang out together that much, but we cohabitate really well. So that's an interesting one that I think a lot of couples just don't give themselves permission to look at from a different angle of, does it really genuinely work for us to live together? Or maybe it's just, does it work for us to sleep together? Sometimes having our own bedrooms can be a really helpful thing. If you have different schedules, if one of you is a light sleeper and the other one's a heavy sleeper and a loud snorer, these kinds of things can create an issue. Also, from a human design perspective, which you're going to hear me start weaving in a bit more in certain episodes as topics that pertain to it come up. It's a really interesting lens that I've been looking through. If you are not familiar with what human design is, I recommend doing a little research or going to my episode about healing the root for lasting transformation. And I will do an episode specifically on human design in the future. But for people who have an undefined sacral, it's really good for them to sleep by themselves, at least sometimes, to discharge other people's sacral energy, especially if their partner has a defined sacral. Then it's really important to take some space to discharge and to sleep better. So these are just areas of compatibility that some people don't look at. Some people are not so compatible sexually, and there are definitely things we can do to improve that. But let's say you have somebody that really loves to explore kink and somebody who's really, really vanilla and does not want to push those edges, and the person who's on the kinkier side is going to get bored with that. That can create a rub for sure. Or let's say one person wants to be monogamous and the other wants to be polyamorous, or one person wants children and the other person doesn't. One person wants to live in this place and the other person wants to live in a totally different place. These kinds of things are really important to look at, because a short-term sacrifice could become a long-term compromise if we're not careful. So asking yourself, do I feel met in most of the ways that I desire? I think it's unrealistic to expect one person to meet all of our needs and desires. I think it's impossible, actually, in terms of every single thing we could ever want in human connection, because some things our sisters are going to be the one to meet us in that way. Our brothers are going to be the one to meet us in that way. Our family, our coworkers, our passions, our connection with divinity. Sometimes we have things that we love to do that our partner doesn't love to do with us. And that doesn't mean we're not compatible. It just might mean that's not a place where we connect. But there are things that can be really important to us in relationship that we feel like if that's not being met, the relationship isn't going to be fulfilling to us. And that's where we want to be really, really honest with ourselves. We also want to ask ourselves, can I be myself in this connection? Do I truly feel like I can be loved for my authentic self? Or do I end up slipping into people-pleasing patterns? And is that my own thing to work through? Or does my partner really not like me when I express my authenticity? And if my partner doesn't like me when I express authentically, that's right there a red flag that it's not a good match. If you don't feel like you can be yourself in your relationship, it's not a good fit. And again, if you have that people-pleasing pattern, you probably want to work through it in this relationship. Otherwise, you're going to have to keep working through it. But if you've been lying to your partner by appeasing and pleasing them and being in this inauthentic people-pleasing state, it will come to them as quite a surprise when you start being your true self. And they might not love you the same as they did because they're used to you behaving in a different way. They're used to knowing you in a different way. And that doesn't make either of you wrong, but authenticity will be your best filter to bring you into alignment. So you can always trust your authenticity is going to give you a clear yes or no as to if a relationship is healthy, if you can be loved for who you are. And on the flip side, can you love and accept your partner for who they are? Or are you always trying to change them? Is there something about them that you can't stand that you want them to change? because that right there is a big red flag. If you can't love the person you're with as they are, you're going to be resenting them for not being who you want them to be, and they're going to resent you for trying to make them be someone they're not. So we can always grow and evolve in relationship, and that's the point in many ways. But that has to happen from our own accord. That has to happen organically. It can't be because we're forced into it or we feel pressured into it. And so not just can you love and accept your partner for who they are, but do you like your partner? Do you like them, right? Or do they annoy you? Does everything they do get under your skin? Would you still choose them if you were to meet them today? Or are you just habitually staying with them from a place of, well, I have this deep love for them, but I've really come to not like them. It doesn't do it for me anymore, but I'm scared to leave, right? That's a pattern people get into sometimes. And then the last question that I think can be really great to ask is, are we co-creating together? Does third stage intimacy exist between us? So third stage intimacy is a term that David Deida uses to explain the concept of there is something bigger than the two of you moving through you. The relationship is in devotion to love itself, to something greater than just the two people. And so what are you bringing forth into the world through the container of your love? What is the spiritual quality that exists through your connection? What is the spiritual purpose of your relationship? What can you devote yourself to that is bigger than either of your egos, but is birthing through the essence and container of your love? So the most physical example of this is a child, but there can be so many other beautiful things that birth through our connection. You could be co-creating a business, a community, a home, a garden, art, a dance. It could just be the spiritual depth, the devotion to a love bigger than yourselves. But there's something bigger. It's not just this you and I. There's this third stage intimacy that weaves it all together in this larger than life, more profound kind of way. Is that something that you experience with your love, with your partner? And if not, what are some ways you could cultivate that? What are some ways you could open to that? So these are some questions that I really invite you to sit with and explore. And not from a space of needing to figure it all out or from a place of approaching this with your rational mind. I really invite you to sit with these questions and feel how they land in your body, how they land in your heart. And if you know your human design, working with your inner authority is an amazing way to feel into your alignment and your truth. And that's not going to come from the mind. So I have a really dear friend and client that I've been doing Voxer coaching with. And essentially, this is a coaching container where we communicate through voice memos on WhatsApp or Voxer. It's a container for a certain amount of time where you can ask questions, share your process, soundboard, and have me in your pocket. And then I'm there dropping in with insights and advice and things that are coming through for me and answers to your questions. And it's a really great way to work with something very specific if you're not wanting to dive into a whole coaching package. So that's a new offering I have. I'll talk about that a little more at the end. But he is going through this process of, he broke up with his girlfriend a couple months ago, and he's been trying to decide if it was the right choice. He's really done a lot of personal work and reflection on himself since the breakup and has realized what were some of the roles that he played in the relationship not working, what were some of the roles she played. He's seeing himself in new ways. And one of the things he kept asking me is, I'm just trying to figure out if I get back into this, is it going to be a waste of time or can it really work? I really want to know if it's going to work. And I told him, a relationship is this living, breathing, evolving thing. And there's an element of surrendering to the mystery. There is no figuring it out or predicting the future or saying, yes, for sure, this is going to work. And that's part of what makes love so precious, is that there is always that impending pain and loss. Love is going to hurt sometimes. And love is always going to result in a sense of loss and grief, whether that's through the relationship falling apart or by one person and eventually both people dying, right? So there's this really precious and vulnerable invitation to surrender to the mystery with love. There's a necessity to surrender to the mystery and to let love guide us and to tune in with ourselves and our truth and navigate relationship as honestly as we can. So we can't say for sure this is going to work. But I do think we can say for sure that it won't be a waste of time as long as both people show up and give it their best and are willing to learn and grow from it, even if they end up needing to shift the container of the relationship and break up or become friends or whatever it is. And so I shared with this client a bit about the story of my own relationship, and I'll share a little bit about that here too, but I won't go into so much detail. That should probably be its own episode at some point. A lot of people ask me about my relationship, and I talk about my relationship a lot with my private clients, and I don't talk about it publicly as much. But between what I told him about my relationship and explaining relationship as this living, breathing, evolving, ebbing and flowing being, he said that it was so helpful to see it in this way, and that it made him realize even more that relationships are really built and do not magically happen, and that it helped him to believe that all the struggle can be worth it. So, so many of the most rewarding things in life are challenging. And a lot of people can be like, oh, I don't want to do relationship. It's too much work. And yeah, it is work. It forces us to look at all the pieces of ourselves, some of the most challenging pieces of ourselves, and to be better. It challenges us to be better. And there's a difference between a relationship that really calls us higher and a relationship where we just spin out on drama. So I actually won't work with people who are addicted to the drama spiral and don't actually want to work their way out of it. I have people in my life who I keep more at a distance because they are addicted to that spiral, and there's a high that comes with that drama, and they love it. They don't actually want to get out of it. They don't think they love it, but they keep repeating the same patterns over and over again, and they don't actually want to take initiative to fix it. So that kind of relationship is going to be exhausting and draining. A relationship that calls you higher, where both people are ready and willing to show up and do the work, even when it's challenging, is going to be so rewarding, even if it's a struggle, even if it takes a lot out of you, even if it pushes you to your edges and feels really challenging and you don't want to be in it at times, but you find yourself persevering and stepping into a more aligned, authentic version of yourself the deeper you go. So my own relationship, I've been with my partner, Justin, for almost 6 years this time around. And we first were together in our early 20s for about 9 months. And I won't get into the whole story now, but basically we went our separate ways with a lot of heartache involved for 4 years. We both had other long-term relationships, and this was a big lesson of letting go and trusting in divine timing. I always knew he would be back. He didn't know that. And I had to let go of that knowing. I couldn't hold on to it and let it congest my present reality. And sure enough, it took a lot longer than I thought it would, but life very synchronistically brought us back together exactly 4 years to the day of when we broke up. We happened to be in the same city, and then lots of circumstances out of our control happened to keep us stuck at my house. And from there, we ended up reconnecting and finding ourselves in relationship again. And I am a big believer that timing is everything, and that sometimes there is work that we need to do on our own. For my partner and I, it was really necessary to take space and go learn things on our own and with other people, and to come back when we were more mature to really meet the level of connection that was unfolding between us. A lot of people end up resisting going after their dreams or an opportunity or following what feels authentic for them because it conflicts with their relationship. And I really am a believer that it will come back around if that's what's in your deepest alignment. You can trust wherever your authentic truth is taking you, and you can take space from that relationship. And if it's what's most in alignment, it will come back around. And if it's not, something more aligned will come into the picture. So something more aligned for each of us came into that 4-year period. And there was that fear. Oh my God, he's been with somebody else for 2.5 years, and so have I. And it was something I had to let go of. I couldn't hold on to it. So fast forward, we've been together for almost 6 years now, and our relationship has gone through so many different chapters. It's gone through so many ebbs and flows. We've both started businesses and become entrepreneurs together. We went through our Saturn returns together. For those of you who don't know what a Saturn return is, it's an astrological event where Saturn circles back to the same place that it was when you were born. And it's about a 2.5-year period that really kind of whips you into shape and calls you forth into a deeper maturation. And it can play out in a different area of your life versus somebody else's, depending on what house Saturn is in for you. And we both went through our Saturn returns at the same time and moved from Portland, Oregon to Boulder, Colorado together, and really dove into the work we're here to offer in the world. And our lives are so different than they were the first time we were together and when we first got back together. And we are such different people, and we've changed so much, and we've gone through all kinds of challenges of learning how to navigate relationship as entrepreneurs. And both of us, being in our yang too often, especially me, and going through burnout and health struggles and financial struggles and wanting to live in different places. And there's been so many things that we've had to dive really deep into, and we've had to really refine our communication, and we've had to peel back layers and get more vulnerable and real and honest. And there have been a handful of times in our relationship that I thought we were going to break up, that I thought we might be at an impasse. I think we're about to go our separate ways, where I even had to start surrendering to that and working through the pain of it. And through our process, we were able to move through it. And it's like we reached another octave. Like we passed the test and we up-leveled and we moved through that part of the pattern. And it's been really incredible to see this happen time and time again, because we've both been committed to showing up and leaning into the crunchy stuff, even when it doesn't feel good, even when it's exhausting, even when it's frustrating and we feel like we're not seeing eye to eye. We've done so much to learn about each other and to work on ourselves and to take ownership and responsibility for what pieces are ours, and to really work with identifying where are the places that we slip into the immature masculine and feminine. And when one of us slips into that space, instead of following suit, can the other one see higher ground and step into their mature masculine or feminine and call the other forth to meet them there? There are areas where gunk had built up that we didn't address, and we really had to get in there and clean it up and talk about things in uncomfortable ways and be realistic about, maybe we can't meet each other there. And ultimately, we want what's best for each other. And so how do we allow love to guide us through this process, knowing that love and truth and honoring our authenticity might take our paths in different directions? There have been so many ebbs and flows. There have been times when we've been deeply connected. There have been times when we've been much less connected. And why I would call this a successful relationship is because we continue to grow and blossom so much. We love the people that we've become through this relationship. We've fallen in love deeper with each other and the people that we've become through this relationship. And we've surmounted so many challenges and come out on the other side better people for it. And new challenges will arise, and we move through those, and we've built such a deep trust in ourselves and each other, in our ability to navigate those challenges and to be really true to ourselves. So even though some of the low points might have not felt quote unquote successful, they are part of the wave. And there are periods of reflection, of really checking in and getting honest. Is there somewhere that I need to step up and grow? Is there somewhere I'm not being fully authentic? Is there something out of alignment here? So it's really been a refinement process of coming home to ourselves and coming home to each other. And I will be sharing about that more here and there, and I'll have him on for some episodes in the future too. Our relationship has truly been my school, my temple. It's been a place that has taught me so much about the work that I do in the world. And I'm so grateful for the challenge of it. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to lean in. And I'm so grateful to have a man who is willing to meet me there and to get into those icky, sticky parts and help me see my blind spots and trust me in the way that I see his. And human design has actually been a really powerful tool in helping us to understand each other and come into deeper connection and closeness. It's really helped us to understand that, well, this might be a way that I experience love, or a need that I have, or a way that I might communicate that might be very different from him. And it's really helped us to see eye to eye. And it's something that I've been weaving in with my coaching that I've just been loving so much. And I am going to be opening up some slots for human design readings soon. So definitely stay tuned for that. These ideas are really a starting point to start reflecting upon in terms of what do you want in a relationship, whether you're in one or whether you're desiring one, getting really clear on what's in alignment for you. I'm also going to be offering a couples course this winter. So if you're feeling turned on by this material that we talked about today, if you're feeling curious to go deeper, if something really hit a chord with you and you're wanting to take it to the next level, definitely get on my email list to stay in the loop on that course. There will be limited space and it will be announced to the email list first. So if you are interested in participating in that, definitely get on my email list. And I'm also flirting with the idea of hosting a couples retreat this winter, probably around February, most likely in Mexico. And if that's something that would appeal to you, please shoot me an email, connect@sorayaleonara.com. Let me know you'd be interested in that. I'm starting to gauge interest, and I would love to dive into everything I talked about today and juicy tantric and Taoist practices and embodiment and all kinds of teachings to facilitate deeper, more fulfilling love, passion, and connection. In the meantime, you can also work with me privately. All the details for that are on my website. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on Spotify or a review on Apple. And I absolutely love verbal appreciation. If there was something that stood out to you from today's episode and you want to share a quote in your stories, tag me on social media, share this episode with somebody you love who you think would really benefit. Please do. I appreciate that so much. It helps get this to the people who need it the most. And I hope that it's really landed with you in a deep way and that you take some time to reflect on these questions and that it serves you well on your journey. All right, my loves, it's been beautiful dropping in with you today. Until next time, ciao. Thank you so much for dropping into Nectar, Sex, and Soul with me today. It's been a pleasure to connect with you. If this episode lit you up or illuminated something impactful for you in some way, I invite you to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone you feel would love to hear it. To learn more about my work, check out sorayaleonara.com, sign up for my newsletter, and follow me on Instagram and YouTube, where I share tons of free content, special offers, and ensure you're the first to know about my new offerings. I offer private coaching as well as courses, workshops, and retreats, so be sure to stay in touch if you'd like to go deeper together. Thank you, loves. Have a gorgeous day. Ciao.